What's up, horror movie fans? My name is Zyler. Welcome back to another movie review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Pray for the Devil. This first part is spoiler free, so no worries about spoilers here until later, and I'll warn you before I start going into spoilers. So Pray for the Devil is the latest movie to come out of Lionsgate Studios. Pray for the Devil tackles themes of facing your demons and confronting past trauma in a literal sense. Instead of tackling these situations in a more metaphorical of handling your problems and seeking help, it goes the more literal route of confronting trauma, and that being the main focus here. After seeing the movie, it was forgettable. This movie is not my favorite exorcism movie, and I don't think it'll be anyone's favorite exorcism movie. I don't think anybody will come out of the theater thinking that this is the best film having to do with fighting demons that they've ever seen. I just don't think that's going to happen here. But how good is the movie? So I rank movies on a 10-point scale. These 10 points are decided by 6 different subcategories. These subcategories are the action in the film, the cinematic qualities of the film, characters, dialogue, plot, and suspense. So based on how the 6 categories perform, we'll determine what the final score this movie receives. So for this movie, starting down the line in alphabetical order, action. I feel like the action here is very, very simple. I don't think there's really anything to write home about. There's nothing crazy overall. The way that they're filmed though, it's still interesting. So because there's not a lot of action here, and the action here is very, very light, but it's effective for what's being shown here. It's very effective. We're gonna go with the 6 out of 10. It's a slightly above average in this section. For the cinematic qualities of the film, the music here was able to hype up the tension in the scenes that needed to be tense. It was able to give off good atmosphere. There's no great shots here. There's no money shot or no poster shot that you're just in awe of. There's no great tracking scenes. There's no interesting camera work, but it also doesn't look ugly either. There's a few scenes here where they use flashing lights that I didn't particularly care for because of the way that they filmed the scene. They would jump between flashing lights, and I found it to be slightly annoying for my eyes. But because they were able to create a decent atmosphere with their shots, and the music wasn't bad, and even though there's no great shot or money shot, it's still good. So for me, cinematic qualities scored a 7 out of 10. Characters here are all very, very simple. There's no standout characters, there's no memorable characters. You're not going to walk away from this film with a favorite character. So because of that, the characters here are very average. Only one of the characters has a major arc, and even then, I think it could have been pulled off a little bit stronger. So for me, characters scored a 5 out of 10. As for dialogue in the movie, there's no cringy dialogue here, but there's no amazing standout lines. There's no great humor in the film. It's all very average. It all straight down the line. It goes from point A to point B, but there's no standout scenes here. But because there's no bad and there's no great, it also scored a 5 here. As for the plot of the movie, this is where I have the most problems with the film. The plot here, it could have been a lot better. There's a few problems here that I just could not get past. So, but it's not awful. They just should have doctored it up a little bit to fix things that needed to be fixed. But because it's not the worst plot ever, but it's not good, it scored a 4 out of 10. It is a slightly below average plot. The suspense here was actually a lot of fun. They had shots that were really unsettling. They use a lot of, going back to the cinematography with the suspense, they use a lot of body horror here, which I really appreciated. I think in exorcism movies, you need to take advantage of this demonology and really use that body horror to create unsettling, tense scenes. And they also have a lot of scenes that create tension and where they even surprise you in some scenarios. They also use a lot of jump scares. And I think jump scares are a very lazy way to portray horror, especially here. They use about 10 to 15 throughout the entire film. So I think it was very, very overdone with jump scares, but it's not bad with suspense, and it's actually pretty good. I think they could have used a little bit more tension in some areas towards the end of the film, or put more characters in certain types of situations, because the tension is effective here, but they also don't use it to its full ability, and they also use jump scares. I've scored it as a 7 out of 10. It's good tension. After totaling all these scores, the average score came out to about a 5.6. I don't do decimals, so this will be rounded up to a 6 out of 10. This movie is slightly above average. So this movie is not bad. It's fun. You're gonna walk out decently entertained. You're gonna walk away with very little to talk about, I feel. And you're gonna forget about it by the next day. You're not gonna have a lot to discuss. And as I previously stated, it will not be your favorite horror movie. So that's going to wrap it up for my spoiler-free section. I have a lot to talk about in the spoiler section, though. I hope to see you in the next movie review. After you see the movie, let me know what you think. If you agree with my score, disagree, come back for the spoiler section. See if you have the same complaints as me, or if you think I'm being too harsh or anything like that. Hope you have a great day. Peace. What is up, and welcome to the spoiler section of my review. Okay, so the way we're going to do this, we're going to go down the line again. So we're going to start with action and talk about some of the action scenes that are here, and just kind of work our way down, and problems that arise, we'll bring them up as they pop up. So for action here, there's very few action scenes. Starting with the first act, there's two, one with Natalie and one with the old guy. So again, already starting, there are very, very forgettable characters that don't show up. So that's gonna be something that we reiterate with the character section. But for action here, the most annoying parts of the action are sometimes you don't always see what's going on because they use disorienting camera work, use jump cuts to go from different angles to show what's going on in a very disorienting way. They also use a lot of flashing lights to give you a unclear image of what's happening. And for me, it was just really, really disorienting. You could argue that that's the point, is that it's supposed to be disorienting, but I didn't appreciate that. I don't like being disoriented when I go see a movie. I don't think it should be annoying to see the movie. I think it should be an exciting experience and be interesting to watch. I don't think it should be just a chore to look at. That's why I did give it a 6. I don't think there's nothing special here. It's just a slightly above average movie. The scene with Dante's sister, that action scene was actually kind of fun. I liked what they did with the fan there, the fight that they had, but that's really it. Like that's like the standout scene here. The old man scene isn't really crazy. The fight with Natalie in the beginning of the film had interesting shots and interesting tension, but there's no real action here. So it's very, very light there, and the confrontation is very short in every scenario. It's very, very short. When it comes to cinematic qualities, I mentioned in the non-spoilers that I really liked the body horror that they did. They used a lot of body horror here. They had shots of Natalie. She puts her hands on her face, and her hands get holes in them, and maggots come out. And at first it was really unsettling. The CGI could have been better. If the CGI were better, it would have been even more unsettling. Or even if they went with some practical effects with some CGI, I think it would have been a lot better. But it looked like they mostly did CGI. Had they switched it up and gone with practical effects, I think I would have liked it more. But things like that were very unsettling. They used a lot of bone cracking or bent spines that were just unnatural movements, a lot of contortionist movements, which, it works. It's not terrible, but it's nothing new here. Music here, like I said, isn't really anything to write home about, but it's not bad either. I think it does accent the scenes that it needs to be here in. But even as I'm doing my review, I find that a lot of the scenes that just aren't very memorable. I'm over here struggling to find a scene that I'm just that I really, really liked or really remembered. Whenever Natalie fights the two fathers for the first time and she jumps up on the wall, those scenes are shot really well. I think that whole sequence with Natalie at the beginning is overall pretty decent. I think it has tension there, it has good, decent action, as well as some good cinematography work. Other than that, it's just not very memorable. Like, there's not a lot going on here. For characters, it's the same. They're all forgettable. The characters here are just so forgettable. I remember Dante. And I remember Dante, Annie, and Natalie. Those are the only characters that I know, even though there's a lot more. There's the psychiatrist character. There's the father character. There's another father with Dante who dies. And he has a name, but he just dies. And I didn't care that he died. I didn't even know his name when he died. I felt like they had very, very weak characters. There's no real character arcs. Annie's own character arc is that she's confronting her trauma in a very, very literal sense, which this will go into plot and dialogue. I feel like this point that Natalie is the daughter to Annie should have been talked about way sooner. Because the way for me that it felt is that we went this first part of the movie, right, where we just introduced everybody. And she realizes that possession is real and her fears are confirmed. And then in the second half, whenever she goes and talks to Dante's sister, that's when you hear that she had a miscarriage or that she gave away her baby. Why are we bringing this up in the second act? Just to make it be the major confrontation in the third act. This should have been something that was set up in the first act, brought up again and brought to the light in the second act, and then finally resolved in the third act. And that's kind of how I feel about the whole movie. There are good ideas here, but the way that they're pulled off are just really, really lazy or just not done in the proper way. There are scenes here that just aren't necessary. Parts of the plot just don't make any sense. That's why the plot here got such a low score of a 4, because they could have, this is how I would have fixed the movie, right? So in the very beginning, have those flashback scenes of Annie being with her mom, have her going to the home and giving away the kid, right? Having her child be adopted. And then in the second act, keep it about the same, keeping her relationship with Natalie still strong. In the second act, bring up the fact that she did have, or she had her kid adopted, or her kid was adopted. Bring that back up. Have it be a major confrontation here with Dante's sister. And that's completely fine. And then in the third act, that's when you finally get all the pieces coming together, and you go, oh, Natalie is her daughter, long lost daughter. And I feel like that would have been a much more appropriate confrontation and just would have made the film stronger. Another thing I think they could have changed to make it a more cohesive story is Annie is kicked out of this school for disobeying the church and for thinking that she knows better than the church whenever she goes to help Dante's sister. So why is it after she's kicked out for going against the church that she's now promoted to going to the Vatican after doing the exact same thing again? I feel like with no major consequences. Like, no one here is here to help with Natalie and her possession except for Annie, Dante, the other priest that we saw, the 2 dudes that failed to work with Natalie already are in charge of Natalie here, and then Annie. Where's the father? The father character. Like, why is he not here? The final third act, I think, could have been fixed by 1, taking out the whole scene in the third act with the psychiatrist. Because literally, this is how it feels in the movie. She goes to the psychiatrist says, oh yeah, Natalie made a full recovery. She walks out, Dante talks to her, she's back. So for me, it felt like this was just a scene to make it, instead of being an hour and 20-minute movie, they just added like an extra 3 to 5 minute scene. So that way it could be an hour and 36 minutes once you put on credits here. So it felt like that scene was just really, really unnecessary. And I feel like if you would have added those scenes that set up the adoption subplot sooner, could have had the exact same effect, and it would have made the story more effective and maybe a little bit more memorable, because those elements would have been in my head and then finally confronted at the ending. So we already established that Dante and this other father are terrible bozos that don't know how to do their job, right? So what if we replace not Dante, but the other father that's forgettable anyways and has already failed? His portion of the movie is already taken up. Take that character out. Put the father in, the one that has faith in Annie. Put him here and set him up to die or to be inadequate in resolving Natalie's possession, and Annie takes over and is the hero here. This will both establish that Annie is strong and that her methods are good. It'll establish that the church was wrong, and it would make more sense for her to be promoted to go into the Vatican after the father that trained everybody failed, and yet she was able to come back through and solve the issue that the church could not. Had they done that, again, you would have had a stronger third act and just a stronger movie overall to make it more memorable. And I know I keep saying this, and I just keep nailing this idea in. This movie is not bad, but there are so many things here that could have been done a little bit better, and we would have had like an 8 out of 10 movie here, and this would have been so much better and so much less of like just like a throwaway Halloween movie, and it could have been an actually decent exorcist film, or an exorcism film, possession film, demonology film, whatever you want to call them. I don't really know what to call them. But because they don't really go into these ideas that they do set up, it's just kind of plain. And I feel like there's no like pizzazz here. There's no special element. It's just basic, and it shows in the scoring. It really does. Yeah, those are really my main issues. There's really no problems with suspense. I already covered that in the non-spoilers. That's literally just all the jump scares that they use. The plot just needs some doctoring. Just add some elements here to make it more memorable, or to make it make sense. Because, like I said, her going from this school to the Vatican makes no sense here. The Natalie subplot just seems to come straight out of left field. Like, you just know that she had a miscarriage, or something, or an adoption, and then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, this is your baby. And it's like, whoa, that was just said 5 minutes ago. Dialogue, it seemed there were some confusing dialogue scenes with Dante's sister. This is my last complaint for dialogue. With Dante's sister, Dante says that she had a miscarriage. But then whenever they confront her sister, to me it sounded like everything in this scene was inferring that she, instead of having a miscarriage, she had an abortion. The idea of having a Catholic family and a demon being here and those ideas of abortion being here could have been really, really interesting had they leaned into it. They didn't do that. And I think I think that's a missed opportunity. I think it could have been a lot more interesting had they done that. That's just where it's at. Like, it's fun, but it's not overly interesting, and it's overly forgettable. And that's the thing here. Like, there's so little to latch onto that it's blah. Like, it's just blah. But it's, it has some decent scenes, and it has good body horror. Things that are carrying this movie are the body horror, and then it had decent music, and then some of the suspenseful scenes. That's what's really elevating this movie to be slightly above average, because it's creepy and it has good visuals. Outside of that, it's a very middle of the road, just like cookie cutter, basic Halloween movie that has a demon subplot. Like, so yeah. That's the end of this review, though. That's really all I have to say. I got all my ideas out. Like, there's not a lot here. It's a very short movie. There's no reason to go rambling on for 20 minutes. There's no reason to talk for 20 minutes. But yeah, that's the full review. It did get a 6 out of 10. Slightly above average film. If you plan on going on a date, go see this movie. It's really simple. It's really short. It's an hour and 36 minutes long. That's with credits. So there's really no excuse to not go see it in theaters. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of time. The only thing you got to do is pay for the ticket. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you have anything you'd like for me to review, please leave a comment. Let me know. Do the Holy Trinity. Like, share, subscribe. I appreciate any kind of support. I really do. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to watch my review. Hope you have a great day yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.